What would you do if you walked into your own home and found another woman in your bed? Would anger take over? Would your heart race with betrayal? And would everything inside you change in that one moment? Could a single impulsive action lead to something irreversible? A situation that began with love and trust, now completely torn apart. On July 18, 2023, Stephanie Alexander, a 53-year-old wife, returned to her home. What she found inside her own bedroom would change her life forever. There, in her bed, lay a woman, Tyra Crosby, 25 years old, the woman her husband had been secretly seeing. What happened next would result in a deadly act that shook an entire community, a family left to mourn the loss of a life, and another left to face the consequences of betrayal. Welcome to Crime Mind, where we bring you the most intriguing, real-life true crime stories, stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew. If you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new case. Before we begin today's story, we'd love for you to like, comment, and share this video with anyone who enjoys true crime. Your engagement truly helps us bring these important stories to life, and we appreciate your support. Our deepest condolences go out to Tyra Crosby's family and loved ones during this incredibly difficult time. No words can truly ease the pain of losing someone in such a tragic way, and our hearts go out to her mother, Tanya Hoskins, and all those who loved Tyra. The emotional toll this loss has taken is unimaginable, and we hope they can find strength and support as they cope with this heartbreak. Our thoughts are with them as they continue to grieve, and may they eventually find some sense of peace through the pain. Stephanie Alexander, 53, had spent years building a life with her husband, a life she thought was filled with trust and shared dreams. But over time, something began to feel off. Little things, a missed call, a late night, a silence where there should have been words, made Stephanie feel uneasy. Her suspicions grew, but like many in her position, she tried to push them aside, convincing herself that everything was fine. After all, they had been together for so long, what could possibly go wrong? But deep down, Stephanie knew something wasn't right. And it was on the morning of July 18th, 2023, that her worst fears would be confirmed.
Tonight, the friends and family of a woman killed inside a Northwest Charlotte home gathering to say goodbye. CMPD says 25-year-old Tyra Crosby was shot and killed at a home on Porter Street, just off Roselle's Ferry Road, early Tuesday morning. They say the homeowner, 51-year-old Stephanie Alexander, came home to find a stranger inside. That stranger was Crosby. Alexander shot Crosby, killing her.
It was 5 a.m. when she returned home, the house still dark and quiet. Her footsteps echoed as she walked through the door, a place she once felt safe, a place that was supposed to be hers and her husband's sanctuary. But today the house felt different, empty, cold, almost foreign. As she entered their bedroom, she froze. There, in the bed she had shared with her husband, was Tyra Crosby. 25 years old, the woman she had never expected to see in that bed, in that place. The betrayal was too much to comprehend. In that moment, all of Stephanie's suspicions, all of her fears, collided into a reality too painful to bear. The next few seconds felt like an eternity. How did she react? Was she filled with anger, confusion, or desperation? Was there a moment when everything inside her snapped? Or was it simply a blur of raw emotions, the heat of betrayal rising like a wave she couldn't escape? We can only imagine the rush of feelings that must have taken over her mind and body. In the midst of this emotional chaos, Stephanie did what she thought she had to do. She pulled out her gun, pointed it at the woman who lay in her bed, and in a moment of sheer desperation, she shot her. The gravity of her actions hit her immediately, and she quickly called 911, her voice shaking as she confessed to what she had done. "I came home and I had seen a woman inside my house, and I pulled out my gun and shot, and she's not moving," she told the dispatcher, the weight of her words echoing in the silence that followed. It was a heartbreaking and devastating moment, a moment of broken trust, of uncontrollable emotion, of irreversible action. Stephanie's life, the life she thought she knew, was now forever changed. Tyra Crosby's life, full of promise, was cut short in a violent and tragic way. As investigators would later piece together the events of that morning, They would uncover the deep emotions, the sense of betrayal, and the rawness of Stephanie's reaction. What drove her to this point? Was it a moment of rage, or was it the culmination of years of doubt and suspicion that finally broke through? The police arrived at the scene shortly after the 911 call, finding the house eerily quiet. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign that anyone had struggled to get inside. The bedroom where the shooting had occurred told its own story. Tyra Crosby was lying on the bed, unresponsive, a life taken in a moment of despair. The gunshot wound was fatal, and the police immediately began to piece together what had happened. There were no signs of a struggle, no physical confrontation before the fatal shot was fired. It was as though Tyra had been caught off guard, completely unaware of the danger she was about to face. The initial investigation seemed clear. Stephanie Alexander had confessed to the shooting. The question now was why? What could drive a woman to take such a drastic step? Was it a crime of passion, or was there something more lurking beneath the surface?
That whatever God sent her to do, she, accomplished that mission. We don't get to pick the date.
The vigil put on by Momo, Mothers of Murdered Offsprings, the organizer Mark Raleigh, sharing the importance of today.
We're in a time of division, a time of crime, when someone's been deceased or taken from you. Our job is to bring healing to the soul of the family.
Crosby's mother, the last to light a candle in her honor.
Just to see how many lives she touched and the love that she had in her heart.
For Tyra's mother, Tanya Hoskins, the news hit like a freight train. It was almost too much to process. Her daughter, her baby, was gone, taken away in the most brutal and heartbreaking way. She couldn't understand how it had come to this. "She killed my baby in cold blood," Tanya said, her voice heavy with grief. The pain in her words was clear, and there was no denying the emotional weight of her loss. She wasn't just mourning the death of her daughter. She was mourning the life that would never be lived, the memories that would never be made. As Tanya tried to come to terms with Tyra's death, one thing weighed heavily on her mind. Tyra had been lured to that house. The GPS on her phone shows she had only been there once before, Tanya said. She couldn't shake the feeling that her daughter had been pulled into something she had no way of understanding. Tyra was young, full of life, and she never deserved to be caught in the middle of someone else's chaos. Tonya was also troubled by the thought that justice might not be served in the way it should. She knew Stephanie Alexander didn't have a criminal record. There were no signs that this was anything other than a first-time offense. "I don't feel that justice will be served," Tonya confessed. "I know that if she's in her right mind, she'll take a plea. That plea may not give her much time." The unfairness of it all was almost too much for Tonya to bear. How could this woman, who had taken her daughter's life, get away with so little? The local community had its own opinions about the case. Some saw it as a crime of passion, an act driven by overwhelming emotion and betrayal. After all, a woman had walked in on her husband's infidelity, something many would say was enough to drive anyone to the edge. But others saw something deeper. The shooting wasn't just the result of a single moment of rage. It was the culmination of a toxic situation, one that had been brewing under the surface for a long time. The case divided opinions across the community. Some believed Stephanie had acted out of anger, blinded by the hurt of discovering her husband's affair. Others saw Tyra as an innocent victim, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, a pawn in a dangerous game she never signed up for. Was this truly a crime of passion, a tragic mistake made in the heat of the moment? Or was there something more lurking beneath the surface, a web of deceit and betrayal that led to a life being taken too soon? Was Tyra simply an innocent victim caught in a dangerous game of love and lies? Tyra Crosby was young, full of hope, and, like so many at that age, searching for connection. It was clear that she didn't expect to find herself caught in the middle of someone else's turmoil. Tyra's relationship with Stephanie Alexander's husband had been an affair, a secret one. She had likely felt the rush of excitement that often comes with something forbidden, but it's possible she didn't realize the full weight of the situation, or how deeply it would impact the lives of those around her. Tyra's innocence stood in stark contrast to the dangers she unknowingly stepped into. She wasn't malicious. She wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was simply seeking affection, something everyone wants in their life. But Tyra was walking into a situation where trust had already been broken. She had no way of knowing that her presence in that house could ignite a storm of emotions so intense it would lead to violence. Tyra, in that moment, had no idea what was waiting for her. Her innocence, mixed with the trust she placed in someone who had promised her something, ultimately became her downfall. What do you think drove Tyra to take such risks? The question lingers, and many might ask, was she just looking for love, or did she unknowingly step into a toxic web? It's hard to say. Maybe she never fully understood the depth of the situation she was entangled in. Maybe she thought she could handle it, or maybe she just didn't see the danger until it was too late. Her story, tragically, ends with a promise unfulfilled. A young woman's life taken in an instant. On the other side, Stephanie Alexander's perspective couldn't have been further from Tyra's. Stephanie had been living with a betrayal, a pain that had been building for who knows how long. For years, she had trusted her husband, believed in their shared life together. When she walked into the bedroom and saw Tyra in her bed, it was as if everything she had ever known came crashing down. The rush of emotions must have been overwhelming. Anger, disbelief, a burning sense of betrayal that likely clouded her judgment. Stephanie's thoughts were undoubtedly a whirlwind in that moment. She may have been caught in a haze of rage, questioning everything about her relationship, about her marriage, and about herself. Did she plan to kill Tyra? Or was it a decision made in the heat of the moment, an act of desperation, a way to lash out at the world that had wronged her? It's impossible to know for certain, but one thing was clear. In that moment, Stephanie saw no way out. She couldn't bear the idea of her husband's infidelity, and the emotional pressure must have felt unbearable. Despite the overwhelming rush of emotions, something in Stephanie's actions seemed to indicate a small degree of awareness. After pulling the trigger, she immediately called 911, her voice shaking as she confessed to what she had done. It was almost as if, in the midst of her anger, she still had some level of remorse. I came home and I had seen a woman inside my house, and I pulled out my gun and shot, and she's not moving. Her words were frantic, filled with disbelief, regret, and shock at what she had just done. Whether it was guilt or the reality of her actions setting in, she had the presence of mind to call for help immediately. It wasn't the act of someone fully consumed by rage. It was the act of someone who had crossed a line and immediately realized it. The courtroom was tense, a heavy silence hanging in the air as everyone took their seats. The weight of the case, of the life lost and the life forever altered, was impossible to ignore. Stephanie Alexander, once a woman consumed by her own emotions, now sat at the defendant's table, facing the consequences of her actions. It wasn't just her life on the line, it was the pain and grief of Tyra Crosby's family, who were about to hear what would be the final chapter of this tragic story. As the proceedings began, Tyra's family, particularly her mother, Tanya Hoskins, sat quietly. The pain on their faces was evident, the loss still fresh, and every moment of the trial seemed to rip open wounds that were still raw. They had come for justice. Justice for Tyra, for the life she had lost too soon, for the dreams that would never be fulfilled. But as the trial unfolded, it became clear that justice might not look like what they had hoped for. When Stephanie Alexander pleaded guilty, the courtroom's energy shifted. Her words, her apology seemed heartfelt, but they didn't come close to undoing the damage. She spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of remorse, yet there was something about her apology that didn't sit right with everyone. "I am so sorry for what happened," Stephanie said, looking toward Tyra's family. "I never intended for things to turn out this way. I never meant to hurt anyone." But to Tyra's family, those words didn't bring comfort. Tanya Hoskins, sitting just a few feet away, could feel her heart breaking all over again. She couldn't bring herself to believe that Stephanie truly regretted what she had done. The apology felt hollow to her, like a plea for mercy, more than a genuine attempt to make things right. For Tanya, this wasn't about Stephanie's remorse. It was about the life her daughter would never get to live. Tyra's family had hoped for more accountability, more acknowledgement of the true depth of the pain that had been caused, but now, all they had was the sound of Stephanie's apology echoing in the courtroom, as hollow as it seemed. Then came the twist that left the room buzzing with disbelief. The charge of second-degree murder, which Stephanie had initially faced, was downgraded to involuntary manslaughter. It was a stunning turn of events. The charge that had seemed so final, so certain, now seemed to fade into something far less severe. Involuntary manslaughter was a far cry from what many had expected. To Tyra's family, it felt like the system was failing them again, like the justice they so desperately sought was slipping through their fingers. Was this really the punishment for taking someone's life in such a violent, senseless way? The emotional turmoil was clear on the faces of Tyra's loved ones as they listened to the judge explain the reasoning behind the decision. How could a moment of such intense emotion, a woman walking into her home and finding her husband's affair, be seen as something less than murder? To many, it didn't seem fair. It felt like the gravity of what happened wasn't being fully recognized. And so, as the judge delivered the sentence, Tyra's family was left with more questions than answers. Was the punishment too lenient for someone who took a life so recklessly? Could there ever be justice when the life lost would never be returned? For Tanya, there was no real closure. She had hoped for more, for something that would bring her peace, something that would honor the life of her daughter. Do you think the sentence was just, or was it too lenient for someone who took a life in such a cold manner? It's a question that will likely never have an easy answer. The trial was over, but the pain lingered, and with it, the uncertainty of whether true justice had been served. For Tanya Hoskins, the loss of her daughter Tyra has been a constant, aching void, one that only grows deeper with each passing day. The holidays, once filled with laughter and warmth, now serve as painful reminders of what she will never experience again. I won't be able to partake in another Thanksgiving or Christmas with her, Tanya says, her voice breaking as she imagines the holidays without Tyra by her side. It's a grief that no parent should ever have to endure, the loss of a child taken too soon in the most heartbreaking of circumstances. For Tanya, these holidays are now tinged with sorrow, a feeling that will never truly go away. Each family gathering, each empty seat at the table, is a reminder of the life her daughter should have had. There will be no more shared meals, no more laughter filling the room, no more moments to cherish. Instead, Tanya is left to mourn the future that will never come, the milestones that Tyra will never reach, and the memories they should have created together. As Tanya struggles to find a way to cope, her grief doesn't have a clear end. There are no easy answers. How do you keep going when your world has been torn apart in an instant? The emotional toll is unimaginable. Yet she presses forward, as any mother would, even though the weight of it all feels unbearable. There are no words that can truly capture what it feels like to lose a child, and in many ways nothing will ever be enough to make this pain go away. What do you think of the emotional toll this case has taken on Tyra's family? How do you think they'll cope moving forward? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The community has watched all of this unfold with a mix of emotions. Many knew Tyra as a bright, lively young woman who always seemed to bring light wherever she went. Her death left a hole in the heart of the town, a sense of disbelief that someone so full of life could be taken so suddenly. For those who knew her, it was as though the light had been extinguished far too early. But while there was widespread sympathy for the family, there was also a division in how the case was viewed. Some in the community rallied around Tyra's family, offering support and standing by them in their time of need. They mourned the loss of a young woman who had so much potential, a young woman whose life was cut short by a senseless act. These people stood in solidarity with Tyra's family, their hearts aching along with them. However, there were others who couldn't seem to look past the emotional state of the perpetrator, Stephanie Alexander. Some saw her as a woman who had been pushed to the edge, overwhelmed by the pain of discovering her husband's infidelity. They sympathized with the emotional turmoil she must have been feeling in that moment. While this perspective didn't excuse her actions, there were those who focused more on her state of mind, on her remorse, and on the fact that she had no criminal record. Some felt she deserved a lighter sentence, that her guilt should be considered in light of the emotions she was grappling with. But for Tyra's family, there was no understanding of this. The weight of the loss was too much to bear, and the idea that the woman who had killed Tyra might not face the full consequences of her actions was almost too painful to accept. The emotional divide in the community mirrored the divide in the courtroom. Some wanted justice, while others wanted to show mercy. In the end, it was Tyra's family who felt the most abandoned, left to carry the burden of grief without the closure they had hoped for. 60 to 84 months, the judge said, the decision final. It wasn't the life sentence many had expected for someone who had so callously ended a life. Involuntary manslaughter, a charge that had been downgraded, reducing the gravity of what had happened. It seemed like too little, too late. The courtroom buzzed with a mixture of disbelief and frustration. Tyra's family, sitting in the front row, could hardly contain their emotions. What did this sentence mean for them? Was it justice? Was it enough to honor the life of Tyra Crosby, a young woman who would never have the chance to experience the things she should have? The anger in their eyes was unmistakable. But the tension in the room didn't stop there. As the judge wrapped up the proceedings, something unexpected happened. A scuffle broke out in the courtroom, an eruption of raw emotion that showed just how deep the pain ran. Tyra's family, overwhelmed by the weight of the situation, struggled to maintain control. Words were exchanged, voices were raised. The hurt and frustration were too much to bear. It wasn't just about the sentence, it was about the loss, the years of heartache that could never be undone. The scuffle was broken up quickly, but the damage had already been done. The tension in the room was thick, the raw emotion hanging in the air. Tyra's family had come for justice, but what they received instead was something that left them wondering if the system had truly delivered what they needed. The question that lingered, unanswered, was this: could there be more to this case? Was the plea deal the end? Or was there more hidden in Stephanie Alexander's past? Could there be details about her life, secrets, or past actions that might come to light, potentially changing how this entire case was viewed? The possibility of new revelations hung in the air, leaving everyone wondering if the truth had been fully uncovered or if something deeper was still waiting to be discovered. If you found this story as gripping as we did, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, and share this video with your friends who love true crime. Your support helps us bring these important stories to the forefront. Don't miss out on more cases that will keep you questioning everything you thought you knew. We'll explore another heartbreaking case in our next story. Who was responsible? What really happened? Make sure you don't miss it. Join us next time for another compelling journey into the truth. Thank you for watching. Until next time.